Hello, welcome to Toast Time. This week I am making Italian breads. Yes, I said breads plural because if you've been watching me, you know that I am incapable of choosing between two recipes if there are minute differences because I want to see what they do differently and why and figure out what's the best way to go when making the recipe again. This is fast breads. So it's not a quick bread like a muffin. It still has a rising time, but it's a fast bread because it's only about a maybe 2 hour, depends on the recipe, but about a 2 hour rising time. And they both use yeast, the same amount of yeast, different amounts of flour. One of them has sugar, the other one does not. It's kind of all over the place, which is why I wanted to do both of them. So for both, I am starting out with all-purpose flour. This one wants me to do the whole thing of putting the water and the sugar. Oh, wait, which one's sugar? Uh-oh. Sugar. Good. Phew. I want to make sure it wasn't salt because the salt will kill the yeast. So this is sugar and the yeast, and then we're going to let it sit for a few minutes. This one, on the other hand, is adding all of the dry ingredients together. So that's flour, salt, and yeast. And give it a little stir. And the water I'm going to be putting in is warm for both of these. Not hot, because we are working with yeast, but we want it to activate and warm up the dough a little bit so it has a nice environment to grow. All right, then after that, just taking the water and pouring it in. Both of these recipes are no knead. We're just going to be mixing them up with the wooden spoon, and that will suffice. Really simple, hopefully. The other cool thing I'm excited to see, there are two different methods of shaping. One's not even really shaping at all. So I want to see how it turns out. We don't want to mix it too much. We're not kneading. We're not activating gluten too much. We're mixing it together, making sure everything is combined and letting it sit. It's going to be sticky, and we're going to be using a lot of flour when we shape. That is the nature of this beast. All right, this one is done. That's it. Sticky. It'll also get a little less sticky when the water hydrates the flour. We'll see how that one turns out. Okay, now this one, I'm going to give a little stir. That yeast is all activated and ready to go. I'm going to put in the flour. And the salt. I didn't want to put the salt directly into the liquid because that's where the yeast is. Salt has a tendency, or an ability, I should say, to kill yeast. I didn't want to just incorporate it right in. I put it on top of the flour, give that a little mix into the flour. Could even do that on the side if you really wanted to. And same thing with this. Mix it around. Now this one has the sugar in it, which means it's going to feed the yeast faster. This says it should be a 90-minute rise, and that's because the yeast is going to help, the sugar is going to help feed the yeast and grow faster. This one is about 2 to 3 hours for the rising period, and that's because there is no sugar. A lot of people don't like to put sugar in, and that's completely fine. You just have to wait for the yeast to do its thing. All right, almost there with this. Have a couple of dry spots, a little bit of flour on the bottom of the bowl. I'm getting that incorporated. And almost there. You can see a couple of dry patches here and on the side, and working to avoid that. So you bring the bottom up to the top so you have a consistent dough. This one's a little less wet, still very wet and sticky, because that's what's going to be allowing the air pockets to form. If it's a really dry dough, you're going to have less of a rise and big air bubbles that are growing in there. When you have the wetter dough, it's able to kind of puff up more and have a nice oven spring. Oven spring is when you put it into the oven, even though it may go in a bit flat. Oven spring is when it just grows and pops up and rises kind of exponentially in the oven, the oven spring. It springs up. All right, this one is done, ready to go. I'm going to put a couple of shower caps on these, set my timers, and I'll be back. All right, it has been 90 minutes. This is the dough that needed to rise for 90, and you can see how much it's grown. This is the other one without the sugar, and I just wanted to show the difference. So it's risen quite a bit. It has a lot of bubbles, but it's not quite the same amount as the other one. I'm going to let this one keep going. I still have my timer on for this one. And I've preheated the oven. It's at 450. I'm going to take a good amount of flour, a lot of flour, put it on my surface, which for me right now is just the countertop. And spread it out. Okay, without deflating the dough as much as possible, we're going to put this out onto the countertop. And I'm also going to get my hand with some flour, and that will help to remove it from here. Very soft and very sticky. That's fine. It's supposed to be soft. And let's try to show you how it looks, this webbing in here. Right? And good. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is kind of bring this up over the top. You can see that. Yeah, and the flour that's on the counter is kind of coming up over the top with it. Then from here, I'm going to take my bench scraper and cut it in half. Again, very gently. We don't want to lose all of the air that has formed from the yeast and sugar. And as I'm cutting, it's sticking to the bench scraper a little bit, and I'm using that to bring it up and over itself to create somewhat of a baguette loaf shape. Okay, I'm going to do the same with this other one here. Bring it up and over so that there's a good amount of flour all around it, and we're not getting any sticking. When I preheated the oven, I also put in my baking sheet that I'm going to be using. I don't want to put this directly on my stone because it's going to be difficult to get all of the flour off, and it'll scorch, and it's going to become quite a mess. I put in a metal sheet. I'm going to grab that out of here right now. I'll move this. Okay, this is preheated as well. And all I'm going to do is carefully try and pick one of these up and kind of twist it a little bit. Okay, see this twisting shape? And this is something I've never done before. I think it's a really neat technique, and we don't have to do any slicing or scoring or anything with the lamb with this. I'm going to see. All right. Now I'm very carefully going to pick this up and place it on the hot sheet And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I think it'll look very rustic when it comes out, if it does maintain that. All right, and then putting this here, scooch it over a little bit. And I'm going to do a quick spray of water because we do want a nice crusty outside on this. I'm going to get as much of that as I can off. And this is called a dry wash if you take flour and you rub your hands, and it helps to remove all of the dough that's stuck to you instead of washing your hands all the time with water. All right, my spray bottle, do a couple of quick spritzes. Don't want to do too much, but I want to give some hydration to this. And you can, I don't know if you can see it from there, there is steam coming off of the baking sheet because it's hot and I sprayed it. All right, this will go in for 20 minutes. The first batch is out and cooling behind me here. I'm going to get the other dough in the oven. And this is going to be a different shaping process. This is going to be a round bowl. I'm going to spread out this flour on the counter. All right. And make sure I have flour on my hand so I can get this out of here. Put it right onto the flour. And again, we don't want to knock out all the air that has been created by the yeast. We just need to get it out of the bowl as gently as possible. Right? And taking the sides up and over the top. Nice, again, nice and gently. And we're going to create a round shape. And I have my baking sheet over here, same one that I used before. Grab this, make sure there's no crust on it from before. Gently, I'm going to slide this underneath and make sure it's floured under there. I'm going to do that all the way around. And I'm even going to go as far as to push flour underneath it. I'm going to make sure there's absolutely no sticking. Great. Okay, I'm going to roll it onto what is right now the top. I'm going to roll it onto that and then tuck it under itself. And it's going to be forming into the bowl shape that we want. Okay, and you're creating a bit of a tightness here, just a little bit. And again, making sure you have enough flour in your hands that you're not pulling and breaking down the bubbles that are inside. All right, I'm going to put this onto the middle of my baking sheet. Then I'm going to grab the lame, which is my blade that I use for cutting the slices into it. My lame. Over here, okay. Do this, cut there, and I'm keeping the lame at an angle when I cut. Otherwise it can close back up and we don't want it to do that. I'm going to go other way now. And then this is going to go in the oven at 450 for about 35 minutes is where I'm going to start it. It could be up to 45. I'm going to do the spray again over the top to create that steam. And okay, I can handle that. Do this, put it in, then I'm going to just spray a little bit of water in the bottom here to create that steam that we need. And then once these come out and cool, then we can do our taste test. All right, this is the loaf that had the sugar in it. And it looks really pretty. The pattern with when we twisted it, we have the flour and then where there wasn't flour, and it looks really cool. Then this is the one that didn't have the sugar in it. Took a little bit longer to rise. And oops, sounds good. All right, and some crackle. This one's still really warm. I'm gonna go with this one first and give it a try. All right, some good air pockets in there. Nice, okay. So air pockets we have. And good crumb. I mean, I'm squishing that. And it's popping back. All right. Here you go, everybody. Cheers. Interior is very light. The flavor is nice. It's a good amount of salt. Very plain, though. The crust is chewy. It doesn't have a huge crisp to it. But then again, that may just be part of cooling a little bit more. It's mostly cool, though. It's softened up quite a bit. There are sections of it that have a crisp to it. I mean, I like it a lot. I want to try the other one and compare, though. It's a really good basic bread. All right. We'll give this one a try. Ooh. All right. There's some nice air pockets in this. That's upside down. No. There we go. All right. Yeah, it's bouncing back well. You can hear that crust on this one. Let me see. Nice coloring. And it's really cool if you can see the color differentiation. I don't know if you can. Yeah, you can. All right. Cheers. Okay. That is a big difference. But the exterior is very crispy. The interior has more texture to it, I feel. Similar flavor. There's not much to it. It has a little bit of salt, but it's very, very plain. It would be really great for, I think, like a garlic bread, things like that, where you're adding flavor to it, or next to a pasta dish if you toasted it and you have it for the sauce. I think in a couple minutes, I'm going to take some olive oil and drizzle it on there with a little bit of salt, and I think that's going to be delicious. If I had to choose between the two, I think I would go with this one. I don't know, maybe I would try shaping it the other way because I do like that twisting look. But yeah, these are both great simple breads, especially if you're trying to hurry and get something done for dinner quickly. Well, quickly in the bread world, I guess. And that's going to be about 3.5 hours. So thank you for joining me for Toast Time, and I will see you next time.